welcome to episode 4 of the Airtime podcast, the live art podcast. Episode 4 already, that's pretty crazy. These have flown by and we're very excited to bring you this episode. We've got another 2 wonderful guests joining us today, Erin and Lemon. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves? Talk about what you've done with Live Art Society and, you know, what you're up to creatively right now.
So, I'm Lemon. Hello, everybody. I was creative liaison of Live Art in my third year of university, and I also put on a show with them in second year. It was my own play, Playing God, which was one of the best experiences of my life. Creatively right now, not doing much. Yeah, which is why, to be honest, I'm so excited to be chatting to you guys. I have not done much to do with the theatre. I've got a little bit of imposter syndrome today, to be honest, because I've not been in a rehearsal room for, God, a year now. A year ago, I was doing my last show that I did, which was Commoners Free with the University of Birmingham.
Gosh, such a good time.
Which was, yeah, that was the last thing that I did, and I have not done much since, unfortunately. I think that grad life and pandemic life has hit the theatre side of me very hard. But I'm excited to be back. I'm hoping this is my way of crawling my way back in.
Sick. Erin, would you like to go into a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I was treasurer of Live Art last year, and I also did Innovate, which I'd really recommend. It was fab. I got to perform a monologue that I'd written. Since graduating, I founded Windswept Workshops, which is a community arts company that operates in South Birmingham. We do accessible arts workshops as best we can during the pandemic. And in terms of creative stuff, I'm writing a play at the minute, and I've got a writing group as well through Windswept, and we meet and do some writing things. So yeah, I've got a couple of bits on the go, but like Lemon, I've obviously not been in a rehearsal room or even seen anything on stage live for ages. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that we were talking about last episode with just people missing the live theatre and that whole experience of, you know, going to the theatre. It was something that I'm very looking forward to doing again.
Absolutely. I watched Amelia. Yeah, they did like the live, not the live stream obviously because it wasn't live, but they streamed it, and it was like pay what you feel, pay what you can, and I'm not going to say that as the lights went up and the audience went quiet to watch the show, I cried. The show hadn't even started, but it was the first like piece of theatre that I'd seen in so long, and it was incredible. Yeah, and as soon as the light came up and like they started with this incredible like drum beat that just slowly got more and more intense, and people started chanting and singing, and it was such a vibe. And I just started crying. I was like, I just want to be in that space again.
I feel like that's going to be me when I set foot in a theatre again. So, the title of this episode is The Candles on Fire, and we're going to be talking about a little bit of creative burnout and how to tackle that, falling out of love with projects and sort of trying to reinvigorate projects that you may be not really enjoying for whatever reason. So I guess the first place to begin is with creative burnout.
It's a weird one for me because my kind of, other than playwriting, my main passion is Thai boxing, and if I get creative burnout, I tend to go and hit people / pads, all consensual. But that's been kind of difficult during the pandemic because I haven't had that other side of it. But I guess exercise is a big one for me in general. Going for a run is not nearly as fun as beating people up, but I think that it still really works for me to just get some adrenaline pumping and get out, you know.
I think you can't force anything into the box that you want it to be in when it comes to like theatre. Like if you're putting on if you're in a rehearsal room and you have this clear kind of idea of how something should look in your head, and then it's not looking that way and you're putting pressure on yourself and it's just not going right, it's probably because it's not supposed to look that way. Or it's probably not supposed to be going on this kind of like amazing kind of journey that you thought it would be. So I think a second eye is always, I
Mm.
think, a great way to kind of get things restarted and put less pressure on yourself. I think if you're stressed and you're feeling the pressure and you're feeling burnt out, putting more pressure on yourself to get out of that burnout is just gonna it's gonna feed the fire if we're gonna keep going with this flame
Mm.
metaphor. Um, yeah, and that's why I loved being a creative liaison for live art, and why I always have assistant directors or co-directors on any project that I do, because I think trying to tackle something by yourself will inevitably lead to burnout, and just having someone to lean on, someone to come into the room and kind of see jazz things up a little bit is a great way to kind of start fresh.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's also, having that outside eye coming in and see the wood for the trees, basically, because I know I can get very kind of detail orientated over things, and if something's not clicking exactly the way I want it to, or whatever, then it can become a point of fixation. So having someone else come in, or maybe even someone that's like not associated with the production at all, you just give them a rough kind of, this is sort of what we're going for, take a look, and they can just be like, well, you know what, this is this, and XYZ, and having that objective eye come in can really help you be like, oh, okay, oh, you've thought about this, oh, that can spark, it kind of relights the flame of thought if you get someone else to come in and have a look at it. Because otherwise I can get very in my head about this type of stuff, like if it's not clicking, or if I'm not, saying the right things to the actors or to the crew members, and they're just like, I don't know what you're going on about, because you can see stuff so clearly in your head, and then sometimes there's a little bit of loss of what your brain's thinking and what your mouth's saying. But yeah, definitely, I agree.
Yeah,
I think it's very easy for directors especially to get frustrated with themselves quite easily. I feel like most people who do direct are generally quite hard on themselves, and if their vision isn't being realized, they can spiral quite quickly. Just from my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a classic trait.
Yeah, definitely. And it's that pressure, when you're
Definitely.
put in that situation and things aren't working out, it just, builds and builds and builds, and it becomes a thing where you're forcing yourself to be creative, or you're forcing yourself to, come up with these ideas, and a lot of the time that doesn't end up actually happening, and you become this stress ball. So yeah, going back to that whole thing of an outside eye, and they might not even need to be, a creative. It can literally just be, a flatmate or a friend or whatever, but just someone to bounce your ideas back and forth off. And I think talking to people who aren't necessarily in the creative bubble definitely provides sort of like an audience member's point of view, or like the sort of lay person, because I know as a creator myself, I definitely overanalyze everything that I do, and I'm like, is this working, or are these signs coming across in my writing, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it's just going back to the simple, does it work for X person? Does it work for, these people that I'm trying to create my work for?
I think it's okay as well. Maybe not once you're in the rehearsal room, but I think there's a version of it that fits in the rehearsal room, to just kind of walk away from a project for a bit. Like if you're not vibing with something you're writing or a concept you have, or you're rehearsing one element of the scene over and over, then it's completely fine to just leave it for a bit, and leave it for as long as you need to leave it and have capacity to leave it, and then come back to it again with fresh eyes and potentially a second pair of eyes at a later date. Or if it's still idea process, maybe you'll come back to it and go, actually, no, this isn't important anymore, and you'll get rid of it. But I think it's so easy to get completely obsessed with one thing when actually, sorry, a car just bibbed its horn outside. That's brilliant.
Okay.
When actually it's perfectly fine to just to just walk away sometimes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like sometimes the rehearsal room can be a little bit like a puzzle almost. And if a piece is I'm so metaphorical. If a piece isn't fitting, it's okay to go back and start around the edges again. And there's probably a reason why, a lot of the time, you don't rehearse in chronological order, because of people's schedules and stuff like that. And it could be that once you've rehearsed another scene, you come back to that scene and go, oh, all the things that we've just kind of mined and all the things that we've just dug and revealed about this play or this piece doesn't work anymore. And that's why it wasn't working. Is we needed to jump to a different place in the kind of the timeline to make it work. So absolutely, I think walking away is not something that should be felt like a defeat.
Definitely. I mean, I think also coming back to Erin's point at the start, physically walking, because I know a lot of the time when I'm doing essays as well, or just non-creative stuff, when you feel a little bit of burnout, I like to just pop on my headphones and go for a walk. And especially if you're in the midst of doing a show, kind of sometimes a particular song and the pace of it and walking and surrounding it will be oh, this is exactly how this scene works. Everything will just click when you're least expecting it to. And I think that's taking time out can be really productive for when you go back in, because even if you're not, you try not to think about things when you're taking time away from work, because otherwise it all gets all consuming. But when it's just kind of bubbling on the back burner in your head and you're thinking about other things like laundry or whatever, something can just, you do something and suddenly something within the play just clicks properly, the dynamic between characters or the way a scene should build or something. It'll just click in your head and you'll be oh, okay, right, now I'm ready, I'm fresh and reinvigorated to go back into the project. I think adrenaline and endorphins from doing other stuff is really, really important in that.
Yeah, definitely. And then for me as well, acting on those bursts of inspiration, to write something or to channel it into creating something, because coming at it from a writer's perspective, I find it so difficult to, if there's a deadline or whatever, it's you need to write a monologue for this date and you don't have anything. It's I need to start writing, but I can't put words on this page. But then actually, having that 2 a.m. burst of inspiration and being oh yeah, this is a sick idea, let me get some words on paper. And it might not necessarily be amazing, but it's a start, and you can build it from there. And yeah, I mean, it's like you were saying, it's not necessarily a consistent thing or a linear thing. There's going to be those times when all progress stops, but there's also the times when you suddenly just have these creative bursts. And I think that's one of the best things about being a creative, is when you're in that moment where everything just sort of clicks and you can see things so clearly, and acting on that to create whatever it is that you're doing is amazing.
Yeah, it's such a rush, isn't it?
Yeah.
Literally.
The rush of realizing that something looks good in your head and then it looks good on the stage. Ugh, there's nothing like it. Oh, what I was gonna say, sorry, I was gonna say also, I think watching other people, sorry, watching other people's theatre or watching other people's
Yeah.
I really did lose that thought. So the way that I got the idea for my first play, I was watching a live art show. Oh my god, so embarrassing, I forgot the name. It was something about dancing in the rain. It was amazing. It was when I was in first year. And I was watching that and it was amazing. It was this physical theatre piece. It's about half an hour long and it was in the basement and they had all this cool sand that they were it wasn't actual sand, it was fine almost like powder, and they were like dancing in it, and it was so good. And then I was just watching it, and then from that I had the idea for playing God, which like was the most naturalistic play. Like, isn't like obviously people like decided what happened and stuff, which was cool, but like the actual core root of it, it was so realistic. It was so much naturalism. But had I not gone and seen that show, I would never have had that idea. And also, like, when I was really stuck rehearsing Faustus, I watched a lot of the sandbox rehearsals because Sam has such a different director approach to me. And like, I know obviously not everyone's lucky enough to go and just watch someone direct, but I would go to these sandbox rehearsals and I'd watch Sam direct and I'd learn from it. And I'd go back into the Faustus rehearsal room and be like, I just watched Sam do this. I want us to do it now. And it took the show in directions I never would have thought it would go to.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy, like the amount of content that's out there. You know, you might not need to go watch like a play, but anything creative and keeping that creative part of your brain engaged as you go about whatever is so important, because you know you do see things in a completely different light, and you know stealing ideas is part of the dramatic and creative process for
It's perfectly
anything.
okay. It has to be okay because I've done it so many times.
Literally.
Honestly. Like, so one of my favourite pieces of theatre, pretty much in the entire world, is Frantic Assembly's A Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
Classic.
Yeah, classic piece. If you didn't get a chance to see it or whatever, you can't find a recording of it, watch kind of trailers on YouTube because that's kind of the highlights reel of what the play was like. But they use these sort of like white boxes a lot as set, and they use a lot of kind of, they don't have very much set, they just kind of make it with these little white boxes and just how the actors interact with the world around them. And I have used boxes to be set pieces in shows I've directed. I've stolen lifts, I've stolen sequences or ideas for sequences. Pretty much everything I've worked on has been touched by that show in some way, and that's okay, because if you find something that really engages and inspires you, then you can use it as your muse. You can magpie stuff from it to sort of find your feet until you can start feeling that you're more comfortable with putting your own sort of unique ideas on it. Then, you know, that's all perfectly okay. Like, nothing is original. I don't think nothing in the world now is original, which, you know, is not a bad thing, but because everyone's putting spins on their own experience and with their own art and stuff, and magpieing bits and pieces from shows is a perfectly grand way of going about your business and great for sort of inspiring your next moves.
Yeah, if theatre had a family tree, boy, that would be wild.
It would be so incestuous, I'm not gonna lie.
Literally. It is the whole thing of, you know, keeping things going and realizing, you know, that there are things that work and there are things that don't in a piece, and breaking it down. So I think the biggest thing for me with Creative Burnout and, you know, facing the problems in a piece is it can feel like overwhelming. You know, you've put all this effort and all this energy into creating something, and you know, in that moment you might think, oh, you know, this is all shit, you know, oh, this is all bad, because you don't realize, you don't in that moment separate, you know, what's good from what is bad. So, you know, critically reflecting and going back on your piece and saying, like, breaking it down, so, oh, this part really works, but this part needs some improvement, and then thinking, you know, how can I improve this part? And you might not have those answers, you know, right now, but it's a place where you can go, and getting ideas from, you know, a variety of sources, but also through like practical playing about with it, is the best thing that I can suggest. And it's something that has helped me in the past when I really have just been like, I cannot create right now.
Yeah, and kind of like, not repeating myself, but I think you should always utilize the kind of tools that you have in front of you. When you do go through like a creative burnout, like, I think you almost get like your creative toolkit, like, which kind of includes like music, television, other theatre shows. Like, you can kind of, there's a risk of oversaturation, but there's no harm in just spending like a few days just going and finding as much new stuff as you can. Like going on, I don't know, like Discovery Weekly on Spotify, having a little shuffle through, like things like that. And even that kind of brings inspiration, or asking friends if they've seen anything good on Netflix.
I feel like there's something to be said for just talking and listening as well. Like I do like to go and read poems, and I do like to go and watch stuff, but my favorite thing to do is just kind of, it sounds really creepy, it's not creepy, it's fine, just kind of stand at a bus stop and see what you can hear from people, or just kind of get out and listen, and don't necessarily listen and write anything down or process it. But I feel like those things and those conversations that you have in the kitchen or conversations you overhear on the bus will sit somewhere in your subconscious, and it will come back out in your writing. And sometimes that's what's most organic, especially if you're playwriting. You can get some wonderfully organic dialogue by listening to people and then effectively writing it down word for word, and then playing with it and seeing what you want to do with it. But it's a really nice starting point, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I think writing for me, I just do writing exercises. Something I'd say to start writing, you know, find, you know, a picture, or like, you know, a poem or something, like a stimulus, and then just sit down 5 minutes, start writing from the, you know, perspective of somebody in that world. And you can do so much more than you think you can do. That's something that I try and, you know, nurture with being the writer's liaison of Watch This. Like, anyone can write, anyone can be creative, and, you know, and people that are creative and feel like they've lost that, you know, you will get it back. It's not something that's gone forever. It's not like because it is part of you, and it's finding that and giving yourself the time for that to come back. You know, it's going to be all right, basically.
Something I've started in January is I literally just have a 2-hour session where we run it now as a bit of an event thing through Windswept, but it started off as just a 2-hour session where I sit with Gabby on Zoom, and we just sit and write for 2 hours in complete silence. But because someone else is there, it means that I will just keep writing. And now we have a group of people who just turn up and we all just sit in silence. And it sounds quite odd, but it's quite nice to just have company while you write. It means that I won't check my emails, and it means that I won't go and do the washing up, and I will actually sit with my thoughts and with my writing for a bit, which I find really helps me.
I wish my procrastination was doing the washing up. Yeah, absolutely right. I think there's nothing better than a stimulus and a piece of paper and a pen. It sounds so simple, and it's something I think I didn't actually discover until my third year of uni. Like, everyone suddenly seemed to be like, just sit down and just write for 2 minutes. And I was like, oh yeah, like 2 minutes, how much good can I actually write in 2 minutes? But you'd be so surprised. Like, when you just let your brain just kind of go off, like, sometimes little gems do come out.
I think also as well, kind of bouncing an idea off other people can be really helpful. So I remember with the Order Up proposal, you, like, because you guys were on the proposal like panel, so we came in with this idea, and it was quite, I'm not gonna lie, it was quite muddy, I have to say. I wasn't quite sure what was gonna happen with like the dinner party and all that kind of stuff. And then one of you said, oh, so they're all competing to be the host, or you were asking me kind of questions and prodding and poking, and I came out with that, and suddenly that clicked everything for me. So it was the process of kind of talking through an idea to somebody else who had no interaction with it and no sort of stake in it either, to just be like, wait, what do you mean by that? To clarify, it kind of unknotted a whole lot of the concept of the show in my head, and was like, oh wait, this is how it works. This is how everything works. And it just really clarified it. So don't underestimate, you know, what you can write down to start off with. But even if things are tangled, just take it to like a flatmate or a housemate or a friend, and just be like, can you listen to me talk about this and see where I'm going wrong? Because that can untangle some really big knots in concepts.
Yeah, definitely. And it's those conversations and those creative exercises and things that they don't even need to go anywhere. Like you can sit down and write for 2 minutes or whatever, and that can just sit on that piece of paper and just stay there. Like if you don't think it can go anywhere, it won't go anywhere. But it's the act of creating stuff out of thin air and engaging those creative muscles that is so vital. And the more you do it, the more you build those skills, and the more, I think, the easier it gets. Because I know when I started writing dramatically at first, it felt really strange. Because obviously I'd read all these plays and things, and I'm like, I'm not writing it right, this is bad. But it doesn't matter, because you will get better. In 3 years' time, you're going to be a better creative, and you're going to have a wider range of sources and things to draw from than you are right now.
And I think as well, like you was talking about using your brain muscles and using, like, it is something that needs to be practiced a lot to get better. And I think within that, you also find your style. You find what inspires you, because I think it's very different. Like Erin was saying, like going out and going for a run and stuff like that is what motivates her and what allows her to kind of like declutter her brain and stuff. Like you find your own style, you find what you need to search for in order to find that inspiration out of that rut. And I definitely think that's something you need to learn, along with also learning your own like actual writing or directing skills.
So the next sort of area, I guess, is how do you try and energize your process, for want of a better word? How do you try and rejuvenate?
I think you also have to remember that there are real life people in the room with you. You're not just actors, you're not just directors. You're real people, and you have so much energy potential inside of all of you. Um, for example, I don't know, just even I feel like when I first started directing, and it's something I kind of learned from, is that I always thought that energy meant loudness, and I've put that into some of my things that I've directed. I rewatch them, or I rethink about them. I was like, why was that so loud? And I know that what I was trying to convey was energy. Energy does not have to be loud, and that is one thing that I wish that I could go back and teach myself. And that works in the rehearsal room. Like you could just like, there's nothing better than just having like a rehearsal room where like everyone just lies down and just like takes 5 minutes to just breathe, maybe even put some soothing music on, and you sound like, oh, that will make you so relaxed, and it will relax you, but it will just make your mind so much more like open. I don't know, like, and when you get back up, I feel like it's like you've wringed out your sponge and you're ready to like suck in knowledge again, if that makes any sense.
No, definitely, completely. I think, I mean, just as you had a different conceptualization of energy, I think I had a different conceptualization of work in general, because in my kind of early pieces, if you weren't working on the scenes, if you weren't working on the text work, then you weren't working. Like that, all everything else was just warm up or cool down, and the main, the majority of the work was you had to be looking at the play and like progressing it forwards and marching it forwards. But there is such a benefit in being like, okay, the work for today is yoga, or the work for today is drawing a picture of, I don't know, just letting your mind go empty and drawing a picture. Like that is still productive and still work for a production, even though it may not initially feel like it and it may feel a bit silly, but it is so beneficial, and in ways that I don't think anybody really realizes, to start off with, like it, and in ways that you may not be able to spot. But just having that sort of free mentality to leave the show for a bit and come back to it and invigorate it in different ways, I think is so powerful, and it's still something I'm learning to justify putting in to myself, because it is completely justifiable, but it doesn't feel productive at the same time.
It's the whole thing of everyone is different creatively. You know, it's like if you're approaching a character, I personally think, you know, given circumstances and making lists about the character is the best way that I can approach it. But like you were saying, you know, other people might, you know, really click with, you know, drawing and creating art of the character, or, you know, doing improvisations or whatever. Like, creativity isn't just one box, you know, there's so many different avenues that you can go down if you are feeling stuck with something, and, you know, trying new things as well.
I feel like we've come full circle. Like, I feel like the way to kind of help creative burnout is to try and prevent creative burnout. Um, and all, yeah, like all these things that we're talking about, like finding new ways of doing things, not putting pressure on yourself to read the script and do the script. All that way is going to stop you from getting to that kind of place uh, of narrowness. Like, I feel like creative burnout is a narrowness almost. It's where you kind of
That's a
you've
good
been in this
description.
big like cliff, not cliff, a cave, and you know how a cave gets narrower. So that you start at the mouth of the cave, and everything seems so free and open, but you're so focused on like getting to the end of the cave, but the end of the cave is just like narrow and nothing. You gotta be open to more ideas.
All right. Do you guys have any closing thoughts about anything?
I think the main thing for me is just don't beat yourself up about it, especially at the minute. If you don't have creative energy at the minute, that's cool. Just leave it, do something else, have something to eat, and then maybe in 2 days something will come to you, and maybe it'll come to you 2 weeks or 2 months. But just be patient, I think, especially now. Like that's the main thing for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same. Just don't beat yourself up about it, and don't beat yourself up about it you if you do the thing and people watch it and it's still not perfect, or you go back and watch it in 6 months' time and go, "Oh god, that scene could have been so much better had I not felt that frustration at it, or had I looked at it a different way." Like, everyone's learning, everyone's growing. The only way to get better is to make mistakes, all that kind of cliche stuff, but just don't beat yourself up. There's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes things just don't go the way that you want them to go. And sometimes things go great. Sometimes you have little nuggets of scenes that are probably gonna be the best stuff that you've ever done. And you don't know which is gonna be which until it's happened.
Those are all really, really wise thoughts. Yeah. Oh, this has been such a good vibe. I feel so like relaxed and calmed and you know, good in itself. But yeah, thank you both, Erin and Lemon, for coming on the podcast today. It's been a joy to have you, and I know everybody back at uni wishes you all the best of luck with everything you've got going on as grads. But yeah, that's it from myself and Jazz for this week. Have a safe morning, afternoon or evening whenever you're listening to this. Stay happy and well, and we will see you in the next episode of... What is the next episode? What are we doing next time? It's kind of a overall thing on kind of things that arise. I think we'll be talking a lot about like tech rehearsals and dress rehearsals and maintaining well-being in those, which should be exciting. But yeah, please do join us next time, and we will see you in the next episode.